This event is to continue a global conversation about ageism following the launch of the UN Global Report on Ageism. Some of you may have attended the launch, which took place about 10 days ago. And I'm Masumi Ono of UNDESA. I'm very honored to co-chair this meeting with my colleague Rio Hada of the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights. Before I hand over to our distinguished presenter, Dr. Vania de la Fuentes Nunes of WHO, and my colleague Rio, who will moderate the panel, I'd just like to say a few words. Like all forms of entrenched and widespread prejudice, ageism has real and measurable effects on people's well-being. The Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging articulated that the elimination of age-based discrimination is paramount to enable older persons to actively contribute to the economy and guarantee their well-being. The COVID-19 pandemic has accentuated the pre-existing inequalities, discrimination, and challenges faced by certain groups, like older persons. Older persons have long been subject to inadequate protection of their human rights and overlooked in national policies and programs, which together with the absence of a dedicated internationally agreed legal framework contributes to the vulnerability of older persons and may have contributed at times to inadequate responses to the COVID-19 crisis. What we need are measures that address age discrimination, including policies, legislation, and public awareness campaigns to remove barriers for older persons. The Global Report on Ageism plays an important role in this regard. Intersecting forms of discrimination experienced by persons at all stages of their lives are crucial to understanding what old age looks like. We shall hear much more from our presenter and panelists. And now here's a short film to be followed by Dr. Vania's presentation.
So what's this all about?
Can say it again, so.
I'm too old for this.
You just want me to say what people say about me.
Weird question, I guess.
My teacher says you'll grow out of it. It's just a phase.
It was never a phase. I never grew out of it.
I guess I'm too reckless, I don't know.
People like to talk very loudly to me.
They say I don't think things through.
You're looking still good for your age.
I'll figure it out when I'm older.
You are having a senior moment.
When the focus is on my age,
life seems to get a little bit harder.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I need to keep up
or get out of the way.
I lack experience.
Or too much experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age
like it is a disease.
Where I work, no one takes me seriously.
It makes me feel powerless.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
I hope that the sound worked and that you were able to watch the film that was produced to support the global campaign to combat ageism. I'm now going to share my slides for a short presentation about the key findings from the Global Report on Ageism that, as Dr. Masumi was saying, we just launched on the 18th of March. So just bear with me for a second whilst I share the slides. All right, so after we just watched that short film, and before I get started with the presentation, I really wanted to ask you all a question that I hope you can keep in the back of your mind as we go through this presentation and as we then open up the panel discussion, and that I'm very much looking forward to. So the question is whether you have been ever treated differently on the basis of your age. I'm sure that your answer is very likely to be yes, and that's because age is in fact one of the first characteristics that we notice or that we tend to notice about other people when we interact with them. It is also one of the main aspects that is used to categorize people. And ageism really arises when age is used to divide people in ways that lead to harm, to disadvantage, and to injustice. If we look at the definition of ageism, we see that ageism really refers to how we think, how we feel, and how we act towards other people, but also towards our own selves based on age. So ageism really includes three different dimensions. It includes stereotypes, so how we think. It includes prejudice, so how we feel. And it includes discrimination, how we act. We are not born ageist, but ageism does start very early on, and it is then reinforced over time. Children around the age of 4 are already very aware of the age-based stereotypes that are prevalent in their culture. And from that early age already, they start to internalize those stereotypes and to use them to guide their behavior towards other people and also towards their own selves. The report found that ageism is everywhere. It shows that 1 in 2 people are ageist towards older people. This is half of the world's population that's ageist towards older people, with rates much higher in low and lower middle income countries. The report also tells us that you're more likely to be ageist against older persons if you're younger, male, and if you're less educated, if you fear dying, and if you've had little contact with older people. On the other hand, you're more likely to experience ageism or be a target of ageism if you're older, care dependent, and if you happen to live in a country where there is a low healthy life expectancy, or if you're working in specific sectors like, for example, high tech. With regards to younger people, unfortunately, we have less data, but in Europe, which is the only region for which we have data across all age groups, we know that younger people report more ageism than other age groups. In this case, being female and having poorer health means you're more likely to be a target of ageism against younger people. And people are more likely to be ageist against younger people if they've had little contact with other age groups. But you may ask, is ageism actually harmful? The short answer is that ageism is very harmful and is also very costly. Ageism is associated with earlier death. For example, a study conducted in China found that older people who had negative attitudes towards their own aging had an almost 20% higher likelihood of dying over a 6-year period than those with more positive self-perceptions. Ageism is also associated with poor physical and mental health, including the onset of depression. And it's also associated with riskier health behaviors, such as eating an unhealthy diet, drinking excessively, or smoking. Ageism also increases social isolation and loneliness, and it reduces our quality of life. But ageism does not only affect us as individuals, It limits also our ability to benefit from both what younger and older people can contribute to society. And it erodes solidarity across generations and has serious economic consequences for both individuals and society, as the report shows. It's important to know that ageism, as we're just discussing now, is harmful in itself, but it also exacerbates other forms of disadvantage, including those related to sex, to race, and disability, making the effects on our health and well-being even worse. But the overarching message of the report is not negative. It's actually quite positive. We can combat ageism, and 3 strategies have shown to work in addressing ageism: policy and law, educational activities, and intergenerational interventions. Policy and law can address discrimination and inequality on the basis of age and really protect the human rights of everyone everywhere. Of course, the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging really takes policy and law seriously and is looking for ways in which we can better protect the rights of older people, regardless of where they live or their willingness to do one thing or another. In turn, educational activities can enhance empathy. They can help dispel misconceptions about different age groups and really reduce prejudice by providing accurate information and counters typical examples. They can be included in all types and levels of education and in both formal and non-formal educational settings. The last strategy that proved to be effective in addressing ageism is intergenerational interventions, which bring together younger and older people to work on a common task. These can really help reduce prejudice and stereotypes and are among the most effective strategies to reduce ageism against older people, and also show a lot of promise in helping to reduce ageism against the younger people. Where possible, the report advocates for these 3 strategies to be implemented together to maximize impact. The global report on ageism concludes with 3 different recommendations that we can use and must use to end ageism. First, we need to implement and really scale up the 3 evidence-based interventions that I was just mentioning. But we also need to improve data and research to gain a better understanding of ageism and how to reduce it. And finally, but very importantly, we need to change the narrative around age and aging to create much more accurate narratives. Culture is fluid, and there's so much that we can do to change that narrative if we all join this movement to combat ageism. So to summarize, ageism affects people of all ages. It is everywhere and it is harmful. But ageism can be combated, and we all have a role to play in challenging it and eliminating it. We are really hoping that every participant to the side events joins the movement to create a world for all ages. And to this end, we have developed a very rich toolkit that is available in English, in French, and Spanish, and that includes different resources that you can use to have conversations about ageism at home with your family and friends, in schools if you're a teacher, or in the workplace with your colleagues and your employer. There's also a conversation guide that can help you initiate a conversation about ageism with policymakers. So these are the conversation guides. You can see them now. And again, all of these resources are available in English, French, and Spanish for you to use. The toolkit also includes an event guide to help you prepare your own events on ageism, wherever you are. And it includes PowerPoint slides that are readily available with the key findings from the report, so that you don't have to invest so much time in preparing for the events in terms of the key findings. The toolkit also has infographics that summarize really the key messages from the report and make these findings more accessible to broader audiences, as well as a very comprehensive social media guide. And I'm sure that some of you may have already seen a lot of buzz in social media with the hashtag A World for All Ages. We kicked off the campaign as we launched the report on the 18th of March. And these tools are really there for you to use and to help us spread the word about ageism beyond our immediate context, so to really get the word out there. Beyond the social media tiles that you see on the slide, again, all available in the 3 languages, we've also pulled together interactive stickers and an Instagram filter that you can use to start these conversations with your friends and your family, and to really challenge everyone's attitudes towards age and aging. Again, this is just a preview of the toolkit, but I am very thrilled to be here with you, and I really hope that you join the movement to create a world for all ages. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you, Vanya. Let me just take over the floor now. My name is Rio from Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and I'm very pleased to join this conversation here and facilitate this panel discussion today. In launching the new global report on ageism, our High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, she said, and I quote, "Ageism harms everyone, old and young, but often it is so widespread and accepted in our attitudes and policies, laws and institutions that we do not even recognize its detrimental effects on our dignity and rights," end quote. So as Vanya said, to combat ageism, first we need to have deeper understanding of ageism and how it affects us all. So we have today 3 panelists who I hope will share their personal experience with ageism and share thoughts on what can be done to combat ageism that is so deeply rooted in our society. We hope that I'll try to make this conversation as interactive as possible. Please do use the Q&A function to ask questions to any of the panelists we have here today. And hopefully we should have enough time to do a few rounds of questions and answers to make it more interactive. So let me start introducing Elilia Camargo from Panama. She's a member of the Executive Secretariat of the Continental Network of Older People of Latin America and the Caribbean, REDCONT. And she is, I would say, a representative that, older persons is really a diverse population group. She has a multi-talented person. She has a doctor in philosophy, formerly a UNESCO official, a champion athlete in international marathon competition, and a writer. And she represents this continental network, and she has participated in numerous national and international forums and meetings on aging. So Adila, let me first start with you in asking about your experience of ageism. How did you experience ageism, both professionally and personally, and what impact did these experiences have on your life? Adila, the floor is yours.
You can hear me? Thank you very much indeed. I'm really very pleased, and it's a big honor for me to take the floor this morning and thanks this invitation to join this very important meeting for us. I started by saying that my experience on ageism as a person, I also have, you mentioned my engagement in our network and the Latin American region, is to be forced, for instance, to abandon my, how can I say, my share at the university level, because the university who authorized me to join UNESCO in non-paying authorization of abandon of my share, impose that I call administrative silence on my further request to renew that authorization in order to permit me to continue my job at UNESCO as UNESCO official. And they never replied to my queries. And the reply I learned, they take advantage of the rules on the academic level, saying that after 2 years, I have to be renewed. So they never renewed my license, authorization to join UNESCO. And they declare as a fact, abandon of my share. They opened my share to academic concourse, and they finally, it was my joint professor who took my share. That's one. Second, at the UN level, you are forced to abandon their age limit. And I was forced to, let's say, negotiate one mutual separation at the 58 years old, because I think they have no idea what to do with me. I was president of one of our union. I was, also I took so many risks going to work as an expert in Madagascar, etc., etc. So I have this experience on job, forced to abandon because limit of age or administrative silence. The other terrible experience for me is in sport. You mentioned my engagement as marathon runner. They invented a rule, which is really an invention, that time limit to finish the marathon. And they forced me in Brazil, Porto Alegre, was a world championship, master athletic championship. They disqualified me because I was late, 1 minute late in passing the time, beyond the time. So, and I also was witness of this same disqualification. They did in Costa Rica, was a Central American championship. A lady from 80 and something was in 3K track, she was marching. She was disqualified because she was late, and was no rule from track. There's no rule of disqualifying people because they are late. You finish, you finish. And this lady was crying. She approached to me crying, saying, I give up. It's finished for me. And it was true. I'd never seen her in any other competition. So that's the second experience I had. Invented a rule because you are not able to, fulfill the time limit they are imposing, because you are, and as a matter of fact, you are old, you are not so speedy as, because we have to compete with people. Let me say, master athletic is 35 years and up. So we are competing with people abandoning a long experience in track or marathon there. So this also was a very painful experience for me, to be disqualified because we are not able to compete with the other age. They have to take into account that we are a different, we have a different performance because your age. As I can say, this is real discrimination on sport, in sport, because your age. I don't know if I replied to your question in the.
Thank you very much, Adelia, for sharing your personal experience in being treated unfairly. Because of age, you described, I noted a few important keywords that you use, like you're feeling abandoned, you're forced to negotiate the separation, it's painful experience, you were forced to give up. So these words are very, describes the sort of the detrimental effect of ageism
Of course.
in your life. We'll come back to you later on, but let's move to the other panelists. Now we have Bruno Ibarra Bobadilia. He's a youth activist from Chile, and he's a kinesiologist by profession with a diploma in community-based rehabilitation. Bruno has been working with NGOs for more than 7 years, in many cases as a volunteer. He's also a part of the regional forum of Latin American and Caribbean countries, representing his foundation, Acciona Chile. So Bruno, let me ask the same question to you. What is your experience of ageisms, and what impact do they have on your life? Bruno?
Yes. You can hear me? Yes?
I can hear you. Your camera got turned off, but I can hear you.
Why? I will see that. Why? You can hear me? Yeah. Well, I start when interesting history about students and when I was a student of secondary and high school. Because today, the secondary and high school students from Chile are encouraged most people from Chile, achieving the first step to a constitution change in 2020. The Chile students were signed to 2008 at 2019, doing a strike for inequality and justice. But for years, they are belittled with stereotypes and prejudices from adult people. For example, I always had T-shirts to say me the teenager and young youth didn't have to strive for inequality and justice. They told me the student must just study, follow the rule, and when I was an adult, be a contribution to a society. What's happened now? If my generation and the new generation will be follow the rules, I think today we don't have a new constitution in my country because it was the student and the young hit the first step to change the constitution of Chile. Now, actually, for example, when the strike in 2019 started.
Sorry, Bruno, could you turn your camera on? Because we can't see you at the moment.
Sorry,
Thanks.
sorry. Yeah, well, it changed now. Or it's very strange. Yeah.
Yes, it was on for a second, and then now it's perfect. Thanks.
Yes, well, and when the strike started, I was a group, and I do a group with a lot of teenagers, with people who are 14 years old. In this case, I was 25. We are different teenagers and youth, and we get together. First, to say educational activity of our new constitution. We do a lot of activities to a lot of people, different kind of people. We do some strike, actually, strike for injustice. But what's happened, for example, one of my partners was hitting for adult people because they had a sign of protest. We are very pacific, and the people hit and say, the young people don't know about anything about constitution. You must be quiet. We had another case than a car ran over a partner because they think in another way. So this in 2019 and 2020 in Chile was very very violent with the young people. And do you think that this situation on ageism is just in the street, in the school, but for example in the forum of sustainable development, I can see this situation. For example, I have I had a friend from Mexico, and we had a lot of jobs that we made a document with 2,000 jobs. We do a document to show a civil society and the government in the forum that in the regional forum of sustainable development for America, Latin, and Caribbean, and we want to send, and we could send that. But what's happened when we stand the hand and we want to speak? A lot of NGO, a lot of organizations from civil society don't want to hear about that. Even we still stand the hand, and a person from NGO take the hand of my partner from Mexico and force to down. And I say, you have your time, you can speak. Even we can speak, we couldn't speak in this forum of on 2,000 Jones to show the document, an important document for us. It was it's a work. We worked for for 5 months this document. I really want to share with the people, and we can speak. We can speak in this forum for civil society, and we can show the work that we do. So this is this situation you can find in the school when my teachers say that, in the street when you have some people that think that young people they must work, they must study, and don't talk about politics. And you can find sometimes in forum, yeah, in government, in a lot of different situations. It was very common, and I think this event is very helpful to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno. You reminded us that ageism is not just about older people, but younger people as well. And you shared your experience how young people's voices and inputs were not taken into account in the constitutions or meetings on sustainable development, and not taken seriously by others. I remember when I joined the UN, I was 25, and people often commented that, oh, you must be the youngest people, join the office and this and that. The average age of my office at that time was 45 or something. So, and even my colleague would dress up and put makeup and even dye her hair to make her so that she'll be taken up more seriously in meetings and all that. So I hope that the things must be changing by now. Okay, let me turn to the last, but not least, the panelists for the initial sort of sharing of experience. We have Ms. Barbara Westerholm, who's a member of the Swedish Parliament. She's also part of the health expert group of Age Platform Europe. She's a professor of Karolinska Institute, specialized in drug epidemiology. She has held positions in the past as Director General of the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare, the Vice President, Executive Board of the WHO, and Medical Director of the Swedish National Corporation of Pharmacies, and President of Swedish Association of Senior Citizens. So Barbara, what is your experience, and what pushed you to advocate for changes in anti-age discrimination laws in Sweden? Can you tell us about your experience? You have to unmute. Yes.
Yes,
go ahead.
I am unmuted.
Okay.
Well, as a young person in offices, National Board of Health and so on, I met it as a young doctor, being sort of an expert in my field, to meet older people from drug industry, trying to tell me I was too young to discuss these matters. And what I did was to change the board table in front of me, to make it low and let me sit on a chair which was rather high up, looking down at them. That physical change of room had part of an effect. Anyway, I had to know much more than them about all sorts of things in order to be listened to. Then quite another experience was I had mammography investigation of my breasts regularly every second year up to the age of 74. Then I was told I shouldn't have a new X-ray examination because I was too old. It wasn't evidence-based that I could benefit from further investigations. I reacted like this because breast cancer is very common between the age of 70 and 79. So this is a group who really should be examined for breast cancer. So these are two extremes. But then, as working in public office and in parliament, so on, I have realized what our pension system has done to ageism and ageistic views on people. It's a very good pension system, so you don't experience that very people are poor in this country, Sweden, from where I come, but it has divided the population in two parts: those seen as a resource working, and those being retired, not seen as a resource. And this has been very obvious now during the COVID-19 pandemic, because people aged 70 plus were asked to stay at home, isolate themselves, not to be infected, not infect others, and not take up a bed in hospital. It was sort of a signal that we don't need you, so keep away, don't be a burden to us. And of course, this is in Sweden 1.6 million individuals running different risks and so on. So these are sort of three examples which I have met in various areas. And of course, these examples has pushed me to really work for a age discrimination legislation in Sweden. And I can tell more about it, but maybe you want us to be brief here and come back to that question, because we now have a legislation, but I can talk more about that in a minute or so.
Thank you, Barbara. Indeed, we can come back to that. What type of actions that changes the ageist attitudes and practice. But thank you very much for sharing your experience. Like what you said, age-based discrimination in terms of access to certain medical services or examinations for breast cancer, or the impact of the COVID has had on older persons, being told staying at home, not to overload the hospital beds, or particularly those older persons living alone or in isolations. The impact of those lockdown measures have been very drastic.
I might add this, you mentioned isolation, and the decision makers were quite unaware about loneliness and isolation and the health effects it has on people and their life quality. And that is a very serious matter.
Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, I see just the 2 questions by the audience. Please do use the question and answer function to ask more questions directed to the panelists, either all of them or specific persons, and we'll take them up. Let's see a question from Omukaro from the stakeholder groups on aging from Africa. She says, ageism as a term was coined by Robert Butler, a gerontologist who was specifically concerned about stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination against older people. Now it is used to refer to all ages. Do you think that's, in generalizing the term, the diminishing Australia's impact of ageism, especially in Africa, does this generalization could jeopardize the campaign to the detriment of the old, where the focus of development favors the young? If I summarize, I think she's asking, by defining ageism as affecting all ages, does it work against particularly, does it undermine the older person's cause or a younger person's cause or not? I think that's could be addressed by all the panelists. Question to Barbara: what kind of legislation does Sweden has to fight ageism? Claudia Mala asked if the age discrimination legislation is taking care of all parts of the life of people. Nina from Age Europe is asking, can panelists reflect on the value of law to combat ageism and how a new convention can help? Okay, so it seems like we are ready to sort of go into the second round of sort of discussion and response from the panelists. Basically, I wanted to ask all of you. Vanya talked about changing the narratives. So how can we make that change? What actions and changes need to be made, either in our attitudes or laws and policies? What has been your experience, or what's your idea? And please feel free to respond to any of those specific questions asked by audience. May I start with you, Adelia? What changes would you like to see? You need to unmute your microphone.
I have. It's okay now? Yes. I would like to quote Rosa Montero, which is a journalist, Spanish journalist and writer. Just yesterday, he published, and is a permanent journalist in El País. In her writing yesterday, she said, for us, our living means to be able to have our own narrative, which means this question of ageism has to do with the awareness that we have to be conscious and aware of our particular and, how can I say, body's experiences. We have to put our body in the challenge and in the fighting against this. And the big difference in between the youngest people who are also victims of this discrimination on age is that they have the opportunity to grow up. And for us, they are now, I will take advantage of that arbitrary rule. For us, they are time limit. We know that we have not too much time to do it. And then ageism is changing narrative. We have to change our relationship with our own bodies, take awareness of our own consciousness, and of course, being able to, how can I say, join the others in changing the thinking of how is the meaning and how do you live your body in becoming old, the feeling, how do you present yourself, and of course, all the stereotypes, and cultural construction against this image of the old. What is that? I think the young generation are so afraid, and they reject even the idea to become old. That's a pity. I don't know if I reply your question. The convention is also, of course, the convention is a way to take all those narrative experiences and put into the framework or international standard for the protection of the older persons.
Thanks very much, Adelia. You talked about we need to mobilize and join others to challenge this preconception of age or aging. One of my favorite quotes from the former Secretary General Kofi Annan, he once said that you're never too young to lead, and you're never too old to learn. So
Yes.
it's not just based on age, that what you can do. Of course, you said that if you're in older age, maybe there's not enough time to change things, but you can still make those changes. Okay, let's turn to Bruno now. What's your thoughts about what kind of actions that could catalyze change and change in attitudes from your perspective?
Well, I will tell you a experience that I have even in COVID time in Chile, because with this group of young people for do a strike and do something for the Constitution, we was talking about how can think about the food that we have, about how can do alternative way to get this food with local farms. So what's happened? We do some publication from social websites to say we want to make a cooperative organization to start with relationship with local producer and farmer, but we don't have any experience about that. So when we try to find a person, we're talking about a elder people club. Here in Chile, it's very typical that the elder people take a organization, a club, to discuss it different ways. And for example, we don't know anything about Excel. I know it's just intermediate skill. But for example, we had a lot of help with an elder person had at the grade of economic, a magister of economic. And with this person, we can start to move the food for everybody. For example, in the COVID time, we started in the COVID time. And what we do, me, I am physiotherapy. So what is my work in this organization? I will send the food, because I got all the protections. I had all the protections to take the food for the people, the local farm, and I put in the house of all the people that start with this thing. It was very nice because I don't have a lot of skill from economic, but these other people then maybe they don't have a lot skill from social websites or even use soon Hangout, all these applications they don't have, and we had to teach them how to use that, and they teach us how to use Excel in a advanced way, and this start with 10 people, 5 young people from this group, 5 people for this club of elder people. Now we are 50 person, and it still work. Now I am here in IT, so I had to go out, but this is still work. And we had a lot of people that they don't have some skills from this thing, for example, magister economy, something like that. And we had a lot of force for young people to do the logistic way, to do the website, to use all these social resources to get more people, and to be an alternative way to find you know all the food that we have is very how can I say, had a bad impact in the environment. And you can find is cooperative La Chaucha. You can find it. I can write after how this experience is very good. It's very good to show and to do.
Thank you very much, Bruno. It's so wonderful examples that you shared with us. As ageism affects all generations, you can be creative and innovative, and what you just described is to me a perfect example of taking the opportunity to create more intergenerational collaboration and solidarity and partnership to address the matter. We also have a similar a question from the audience, from Maud. In France, there are a project for older persons to help students, idea being that putting 2 generations together for mutual aid and benefit and decrease ageism. With this work in Sweden. So let me turn to Barbara now, who can talk more about this anti-discrimination law legislation experience, but in response to some of what you have heard so far.
Thank you. Well, when EU decided on an age discrimination directive in 2000, I was then at Age Platform Europe, but also in Sweden. And we realized that it was too narrow, only to have a legislation in education and at work. It had to be broadened to comprise all sectors in society. So we started in Age Platform Europe to design a directive, despite being a civil society organization, to see what it could look like. And parallel to this, I worked in Sweden with the same. And around 2006, we handed over to the EU Commission proposed directive, and actually they took it to their heart, and it's now with some alterations in the Council of Ministers. Some countries have taken it and introduced legislation in their own countries, others not yet, so it's stuck there. But Sweden accepted this draft and has since 2013 legislation against age discrimination comprising all sectors of society. And how did we get it approved by Parliament? Well, there was a very, very strong opinion for it among older people's organizations, but also the youth organizations. And they collected examples of age discrimination, both from the young group and from the older group, and to describe individual cases and what they met on ages was very important, because people could realize that could happen to me too. So now we have legislation in place, reports about 250 or 300 per year, and the reports are increasing, sent to the ombudsman, looking at all these reports. However, the legislation is a bit too weak. So very little is done by all these reports. We have to strengthen the responsibility of the ombudsman to really publish all these reports in a systemized form, and also to have more of information spread out in society. But despite the weakness of the directive or of the legislation, I think it has been very, very important for norm setting. And the pandemic now really got a push for this matter, discussing age discrimination, make people wake up that we have a phenomenon we haven't thought about earlier. So I think to have legislation is important for norm setting and awareness out in society. Then ours can be made stronger. So I would really recommend all countries to introduce legislation on discrimination because of age, because this legislation also comes into education of students. It's spreading in society, not as fast as I would like it, but it's spreading. So I now think we during this century we will really succeed. Maybe my hope is that we should get rid of ageism and age discrimination. People shouldn't ask you about your age. Age should not define who you are. So I could talk a lot more about this, but I think I should stop here. You know what your heart is full of. your mouth tries to show, talk about.
Thank you, Barbara, but I wouldn't just let you go yet. We will have just one final round. But thank you very much for your point that the COVID is really a wake-up call of all the deficits that we had in this society that brought forward these problems of older persons. I wish that we don't have to wait for another crisis to look at these issues, and we need to address this head on and now. And you talked about the impact of the legislation. The EU directive pushed the changes in law at the national level. It's also the experience of the, let's say, the Convention of the Persons with the Rights of Persons with Disability. With that international convention, it sparked many changes at the national level, and we hope that it will be the same once we have a specific convention on the rights of older persons as well. So we still have just 10 minutes or so. So I would like to invite your final thoughts from the panelists, a little bit forward-looking. Just give us your parting thought about, if we are living in a world for all ages, what kind of things that you would like to see? Or, since we are doing the side event at the open-ended working group, what would be your sort of hope or suggestions and for member states to consider to make this world a more age-friendly and free of ageism? Who would like to start? Can I start again with Adelia?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that if I have the opportunity to make an advice on our member states, I will call their attention on this, I used to say, jury convention, Inter-American Convention on the Protection of Human Rights of Older Persons. In particular, is the only convention that prohibit discrimination because the age. Second, this convention also called for the right of a life without fearing, in particular, not have fearing to the death. And also, it's a very important issue for us, chapter 5, number 3, awareness raising. This, I think, if I can summarize this convention, I will put this chapter 5B to offer older persons access without discrimination. That's also, of course, comprehensive care, but to the recognition of the wisdom, the experience, and how can I say, productivity, contribution to development of older persons they can offer to the society. We at the Continental Network, we are examining the possibility to open one virtual open university for older persons linked by internet, which is a big advantage of this pandemic, to connect, be aware that we are all connected, no matter what the age, because I really want to congratulate Barbara. We are not a number, we are a person. And this convention also highlight the dimension of the person. What is a person? We are not, a person is not submitted to caducity or to age. A person is a dignity, is a dimension, open dimension to the universe. That would be my final statement.
Thank you very much, Adelia. Indeed, the recognizing and supporting the contributions and capability of older person is so central to the rights and dignities of older persons, and in fact of any persons. Now, Bruno, what is your final thoughts?
Well, I want to say two things. For example, I will tell about Chile. Chile do a lot of prototype of politics program. For example, the program that say that some elder people can teach a student. We have in Chile, that's just prototype. We said the Chilean government do a report and say yes, it's a good experience. We have, but we don't go on with that, because it's something for resource, for volunteer, a lot of things, yeah. But they don't go on with these prototypes, and they just finish. So maybe the national political public in Chile, or maybe another country in Latin America, must go on, because this is very important, and I like the experience of other people are students. And the second is for the people, actually. It's for people, because we had to believe that we had different skills. Yeah, we are very important. The experience that I say, for example, a cooperative, we have never thought that we can make a very good combination of different skills, different things to start. So I think these two experiences, one of politica publica that to be go on, must go on, and with all the people that we can learn a lot with each week. We start with some programs like the. So if you had this experience, and I send you the name of the organization to on with this amazing experience.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for your final thoughts, and good luck to continuing your excellent work. Now, Barbara, your thoughts, please.
My thoughts is that older people, we who are belong to this group, we are role models, and the way we live, what we say, is very important. When someone asks you, what do? Don't answer by saying, I'm only a retired person, I'm only a person. You should tell what you do and be proud of it. So you should not sort of diminish yourself. Then the other thing that about chronological age, we should throw that away. In Sweden, it's very, very common in articles in newspapers and so on, that when they have to write about an older person, they put out the chronological age. Skip that, because chronological age doesn't define who we are, what we can, and so on. We should not be defined by that, because we are individuals who put years to life in very, very different ways. We have different experiences, different feelings, and so on and so forth. So we have to get rid of all these ageistic definitions about us. And that leads to vision that none of us should be afraid of becoming old. We should be seen as a resource to the very end of life, even if you can do very little. But you can still be a resource with your experience and so on to the very, very end of life. And you should also be able to enjoy life and not be discriminated when resources are scarce, because you are to die soon anyway, so it doesn't matter how you live. That should really be almost prisonized to think like that, because we should all be able to enjoy life to the very, very end, to the very last second of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, and I think you're perfectly right. The fact is, today we are all living longer and contributing longer, so chronological age alone doesn't define who we are and what we can do to a society. So it just remains for me to thank you all, Edula, Barbara, and Bruno, for sharing your experience, sharing your thoughts on what we can do to combat ageism and changing the narrative. So thank you so much, and I'll now turn the floor back to Masumi, my co-chair, to say a few words in closing the session. Masumi?
Thank you very much, Rio, and thank you so much for this very enriching discussion. Thank you to Vanya for sharing some of the highlights from the global report and touching upon the toolkit that's available. Thank you to Adelia, Bruno, and Barbara for sharing your rich, diverse, lived experiences, and for giving us your perspectives and really inspiration. I'm very much looking forward to the continued engagement of all of our partners. Thank you all attendees and participants to your questions. We hope that you'll be engaged in your different capacities, your different countries, regions, and that we all work together towards a world where age is not a dividing factor. I also just want to thank the technical team behind the scenes from Dessa, Amin, Claudia, Amal, and Julia. And as for the UN, we will do our part to change the narrative and promote evidence-based policies, taking a life course approach with a strong UN system-wide support at all levels. So the week has only begun, and we shall see you in various sessions throughout the open-ended working group meetings and events. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon.